Dobré odpoledne všem, vítám vás na Game Changer Stage. Já jsem Krištof z Brin VR a dneska vás čeká přednáška o Vasper technologii. Na nás se můžete těšit zítra ve čtvrtek, kde tady budeme moderovat několik talků a večer tady máme i vlastní přednášku a bude se to týkat mimo jiné také biohackingu. O tom bude právě i povídání tady pana Petra Wasowski. A když se bavíme o biohackingu, tak vás napadne možná takové ty optimalizace cirkadiánních rytmů, ale taky do toho spadají nejrůznější technologie. A Vasper tak je jednou z těch technologií, kterou používají vrcholoví atleti, která se využívá v NASA nebo třeba Stanfordskou univerzitou. Bude vám potom právě vyprávět CEO a founder of Vasper, Peter Wasowski. Please welcome him on stage.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. My goal today is to describe the technology, and possibly we'll have some time for questions and answers as well. So the name Vasper stands for vascular performance. That's where the name came from. And we basically imitate the physiology that we normally see in children in an adult body. So remember when you see small children, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, usually you do not see these people walking. They're always going full speed ahead. And if you were to look inside their upper legs, in the quadricep muscles, you would see high concentration of lactic acid. So lactic acid, of course, is the byproduct of the muscle being used. And because the muscles are small in children and the bodies are small, the concentration of lactic acid is very high. And the higher the concentration of lactic acid in the blood, the stronger the feedback to the brain, to the pituitary gland specifically, requesting additional hormones to rebuild the body back to, rebuild the muscles back to pre-exercise condition. So children, of course, have a high level of growth hormone already because they're growing, and they're boosting this hormone level much more by being very active. So when a child runs around and plays all day, he or she sleeps very well at night. And at night, between second and third stage of sleep, just before the dream state, before the REM sleep, the brain releases 50%, 50% of your daily hormone levels happen at night. So the children, of course, always get it. So this is why when your child wakes up in the morning, he will never ask you for coffee. They're full of energy and they can do this over and over again. So we are extremely resilient from the time we're born to the time we go through puberty. Once we go through puberty, there's 3 factors that take us backwards. So the first one has to do with the muscle size. So we are taller, we have more space in those muscles, it's more difficult to concentrate lactic acid like we did as children, because simply there's more muscle tissue there. Second is we don't have time to run around all day at that point. And third, we're closer to the genetically predetermined adult height, which means that now our natural hormone levels are slowing down. So every 10 years, there's a significant reduction in hormonal release due to those 3 factors. So if you get to be closer to my age, I happen to be 75 years old. People that are 60s, 70s, and if you go to a doctor and they check your hormone levels, the classic normal answer from the doctor would be, well, your hormone levels are low, but that is normal for your age, so nothing to worry about. But the truth is that our hormones do not decline because we age. We age because our hormones decline. So with this technology, when we apply compression, liquid compression to your upper legs and upper arms, what we're doing is we're forcing higher concentration of lactic acid under the compression. And the brain responds, basically the signal that the brain is picking up, the highly concentrated lactic acid, is very similar to what it naturally received every day in a child. But all of a sudden, that strong signal happens in an adult person. So the brain responds by producing additional hormone levels needed to rebuild the muscle back to pre-exercise condition. However, when you're using this technology, there is zero muscle damage. So you get this surplus hormones that are released that are extremely beneficial to increase the quality of your life. So there are basically three scientific principles behind this technology. The first one is the vascular compression, which I just described. The second one has to do with temperature control. So most of you know what it feels like when you exercise and you actually sweat, because that's the only way the human body can cool is through evaporative cooling, which means sweat. So in order for us to sweat, there's a significant amount of blood that needs to go from different parts of the body to the skin. The skin is your largest organ, has about 6.5 million pores. And each one of us has a very specific amount of blood on board, which happens to be 8% of your body weight. So if we're looking at a 100-kilogram person, there's 8 kilograms of blood inside. And if that person exercises with intensity, significant amount of that blood goes to the skin, which means you don't have enough blood at the muscle level to rebuild the muscle. And this is why you have sore muscles, painful muscles for a day or two or maybe even 3 days, depending on the exercise intensity. So when you are on Vasper, and of course we have 3 machines here, so you, after this or tomorrow, anytime, you're welcome to come and try this so you can actually experience it yourself. So we have cooling panels that have water going through it. So we cool the back of your chest, we cool the back of your pelvis, we also cool your neck in order to cool the brain, and we also cool your feet. You're barefoot on the machine. So the idea of cooling is to prevent sweating. So when you don't sweat, your heart rate is normal, your blood pressure is normal, you're not damaging any muscle tissue, but your brain thinks you're going up a 2,000-meter mountain and you're doing CrossFit on top of it. So the brain is releasing additional hormones to rebuild the body. What happens in the end is you get the benefit of this significant surplus hormones without taking any drugs, without taking any chemicals that actually have side effects. There are 0 side effects with this technology. So you feel, when you're cooling, you basically feel like you're swimming in a cool lake or cool swimming pool, but you're not wet. It's a very interesting experience, and I hope most of you will come and try this. So there's, again, 3 principles behind this technology. So the first one is compression. The second one is temperature control, which I just described. The third one has to do with electricity. So a human body is an electrochemical device. And there was a famous scientist who was also an orthopedic surgeon back in the 1960s. His name was Dr. Robert Becker. He was an orthopedic surgeon who tried to find cure for arthritis. Arthritis is an autoimmune disease. And what he learned is that autoimmune disease took off on a very steep curve in a Western society when we basically started using synthetic materials, synthetic clothing. So when you wear synthetic clothing and those surfaces rub against each other, they produce massive amounts of static electricity, and that static electricity goes inside the body, and it's an inflammatory oxidant energy. And then, of course, you go outside and you have rubber underneath your shoes, so you cannot discharge that static electricity to the ground. And your autoimmune system has no idea how to deal with this. So this is when autoimmune diseases took off on a very, very steep curve. So Dr. Becker looked around the planet, and in 1960, there was one country that did not report any cases of autoimmune disease. They didn't know what it was. That country was India. So he flew to India, and he realized that you have almost 1 billion people, and most of them are wearing cotton clothing and are going around barefoot. So they would discharge whatever static electricity to the ground and pick up negative electrons and be electrically balanced. So their autoimmune system was extremely powerful. And back then, you would see a sewage plant with very dirty water and drinking water next to it. So anybody that would look at this is, you cannot be healthy in this type of environment. But Indians were healthy, and they still are quite healthy, simply because of this electrical grounding. So Dr. Becker wrote a book. The title of the book is Body Electric. You can get this book online. And he was twice nominated for Nobel Prize in Medicine for this work. So we designed our equipment based on the research that Dr. Becker published. So this is why when you're on the Vasper unit, you're barefoot. You don't have any shoes or socks on, and your feet are resting on brass plates. Brass is a very conductive material. So we take all the static electricity through your feet from your body, and underneath the brass plates, there are copper tubes that have water in them, so they take all the static charge back to the ground and bring back negative electrons. So you're electrically balanced at the end of the session, which is 20 minutes. So those are the 3 basic principles behind this technology. And if we were to talk about yoga, meditation, acupuncture, acupressure, all of these are extremely beautiful practices for the body, but you cannot apply mainstream science to it. You cannot do double-blind scientific studies simply because your data doesn't fit in the mainstream science terminology and what we actually measure. When we are measuring Vasper user, we're measuring hormone levels, which are mainstream science. We're measuring the blood pressure, core body temperature. So if you go to the Vasper website, which is vasper.com, and you go to the science page and scroll down to resources at the bottom, you will see all of the published clinical trials that were done over the last 6 years. And that includes healing concussions, diabetes, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, etc. So it was very interesting that prior to the pandemic, we were selling about 50% of our equipment to hospitals, doctors, sports teams, clinics, and the other 50% we would sell to private homes. And it became very obvious during the pandemic that when your hormonal balance increases, your natural immunity goes through the roof. Your natural immunity is very powerful. So over the last 3 years, natural immunity was a very important topic. So we are now selling 80% of our equipment to private homes. So this is sort of a background of the science behind Vasper. Now, once you dig into the technology, they don't teach this in any university of any school. So I came to discover this through my own life and by trial and error. So when I was very young, when I was in my early 20s, At that point, my goal to be I thought that I would be absolutely incredible brain surgeon, neurosurgeon. So I wanted to study this and see if this is going to be the rest of my professional life. So I became an assistant to a neurosurgeon, because to actually become a neurosurgeon takes 18 years. And what I learned is that most of the people back in, this was in 1972, most of the people back then would actually die on a table. Because once you have a bleed in the brain, you have to very quickly respond, because the brain actually swells and the skull does not expand. So within 5 minutes, when the pressure is strong enough, the brain actually dies and you have an organ donor. So at some point during that year, I decided that I would go in kitchen side of medicine and start designing some of this equipment. And when I did that, I learned that it's very difficult to have a conversation that's useful conversation when you have an engineer and a doctor in the same room. The problem is that they don't speak the same language, they have egos, and there are many issues where conversation is not being constructive, and at the end of the time, there was a tremendous amount of time wasted and tremendous amount of money wasted in designing equipment. So I knew the anatomy and physiology quite well, and I learned the engineering language, and I became very proficient in actually designing equipment and making sure that it would work. So this was basically 45 years of my life, and I had several companies that I developed and sold the companies later. The last company was sold to Lee Steinberg. If you remember the movie Jerry Maguire, you probably don't know what that movie is. In the United States, it's very popular. It's about a sports agent. So anyway, he bought the company from us, and I moved to Hawaii with my 2 children that were before high school and my wife. And I was looking forward to a beautiful retirement. I was 50 years old. And what I learned is that when we arrived in the tropics, the heat and the humidity caused my own 2 health challenges to become actually quite challenging. So I had traumatic arthritis in both ankles, and I also was pre-diabetic. So my symptoms of diabetes became very, very strong, and I was told that I would be on insulin injections pretty soon. And I had to take powerful pain medications for arthritic pain. So I remember getting up at night trying to make it to the bathroom, and I had to go on my hands and knees because it was too painful to walk. So I knew that the quality of my life was going to spiral downhill. So I wanted to design something that addresses the root cause rather than treat symptoms. And that's how this technology came to life. So today we have several hundred, I think it's over 600 of these machines around the world, and tremendous amount of science behind it that's published. And I think my life, my professional life, could not be any more beautiful and satisfactory than it has been over the last years. So I could talk like this for hours because I love what I do, but perhaps it would be interesting if you had any questions and I could answer them. And so if anybody has questions, please speak up. Yes? Is there a mic that's going to come? Or we didn't think of it? Go ahead.
So I wanted to ask about the cooling system of the Vasper. You said that it cools your body to increase the blood supply to your muscle. However, doesn't this mean that then there will be less lactic acid in the muscle as the blood supply takes it away? Or why exactly, or how exactly does the cooling help?
Thank you. That's a very good question. So again, 8% of your body weight is your blood. So what we're basically doing is cooling the blood. The lactic acid, we want to concentrate lactic acid because the higher the concentration, the stronger the feedback to the brain to produce additional hormone levels. So this is a heat exchanging process. So imagine if you were in a hot city, it's 40, 50 Celsius outside, and you sit in an air-conditioned room. The air actually keeps you somewhat comfortable, but the minute you walk outside, you would be sweating profusely within 5 minutes. But instead of sitting in an air-conditioned room, you are taking small, very easy laps in a cool swimming pool in the same building. You can then go outside and not sweat for 2 hours because you have achieved a core cooling temperature. So there's 2 factors behind cooling. One is to prevent sweating. The other one is to cool the blood, and the cooler the blood is, the more oxygen it will absorb. So blood is mostly water. So if you imagine heating water on a stove, you will see the oxygen leaving, eventually it'll evaporate. So the same thing happens in a human body on a different scale. So if you were to watch people running a marathon, they would be, towards the end of the race, they're open their mouths like fish out of water, and they're trying to get as much oxygen as possible. And they actually get the oxygen in the lungs, but that oxygen doesn't enter the blood because the blood is too warm. So when we actually cool you during this process, the idea is not to lower your core body temperature, but to maintain it at a normal levels. So when that happens, your blood pressure is normal, your heart rate is normal. Normally, if you're exercising, both of these would go up, and your core body temperature is normal. We could have a normal conversation. So a lot of people refer to this as intelligent exercise because it's very efficient. So the oldest person using this technology is 97 years old. The youngest person is 10 years old. So anyone that has 2 arms and 2 legs can greatly benefit. Very good question, thank you. Anyone else? There's a mic closer.
Chtěla jsem se zeptat, to znamená, že ovlivňujete mozek, lidské tělo jako takové, jako myšlenky?
Yes, thank you. So, yes, we're very much affecting the brain. So, whenever you have, when you're on that device, the stress hormone, which is the cortisol level, drops significantly. So, you achieve hormonal balance, and when hormonal balance is achieved, emotional balance is achieved as well. So many athletes, at least in the United States, use synthetic hormone in order to increase their performance. And what they don't realize is that they can afford to pay the economic price, but they cannot afford the side effects that happen when you use synthetic hormone. Because when you inject synthetic hormone or take synthetic hormones, it enters the brain, and pituitary gland, which is your master gland that controls the entire hormonal endocrine cycle, goes on strike because it doesn't need to work anymore. And then the signal for all the other hormones doesn't happen. So a lot of these athletes have to start using steroids, and then they have major issues with emotional balance and overall health. So Vasper is basically an antidote to all of that because your own hormones have 0 side effects. Did I answer that question? Okay. Yes.
I am just thinking if it is something to do with all these methods of cooling your body, like is probably this Wim Hof method, or if you know when the people go in a cool water or very cold water every day, and cooling their bodies. So is it something similar? It's about the cooling, or the machine, or whatever is it, do something more?
It's a lot more efficient. So when you go into the cold water, you know, the whole idea of when you say cold, that means many things. So I don't know if you've heard about people who actually fall into the ice water, and they can be underwater maybe for half an hour. You pull them up and they look like they're completely not alive, and then you warm them up and they came back and they're fine. So we actually apply a very specific temperature to the skin, and the idea is to keep the blood vessels as open as possible and maintain the core body temperature during the exercise. Not lower the core body temperature, but to maintain it. So it's a very specific temperature gradient, which happens to be, you know, we're maintaining the core body temperature within 1 Celsius. And then after you do the 20-minute exercise protocol, you lie down on the cooling bed, and that's when we lower your core body temperature by 1 Celsius. And when that happens, your blood accepts more oxygen, and your brain is known as oxygenaholic. It loves oxygen. So the more oxygen the brain gets, the more endorphins it produces. So people feel much more happy, and you know, you feel like you went through a spa experience, not through the exercise. So in California, where we have a facility where we build these machines, and we also people also come to use them, we give them 3 Vasper sessions at 0 cost. They don't have to pay, but they have to do those 3 sessions within 1 week. And people show up the next week sometimes, and they accuse us of working like drug dealers because they got addicted to this technology, which is a very healthy addiction, obviously. So, did I answer your question? Thank you. Anybody else? Yes?
Jak často se má na ten přístroj cvičit? Jaká je doporučená doba a frekvence?
How often you're supposed to use it? Yeah, so normally 3 times a week is a good amount. If you do it 3 times a week for 3 weeks, you would see a very significant cumulative effect. If you use it 3 times in 1 week, you will already see the results. So you don't have to wait weeks or months. You see the results right away. But 3 to 4 times a week is normal. Now, a lot of people that have these machines at home use them every day. And there's no side effects when you use it every day, because when you do conventional exercise, of course, you do aerobic exercise on certain days, and then your muscles have to relax, and you do anaerobic exercise on a different day. When you're on this machine, your arms are anaerobic, and the chest is aerobic at the same time. Okay, I understand the recording is here, so I should be here. So, if you have any other questions, please ask. Otherwise, we can go on. And the different types of research that we've done, that actually was done by other teaching institutions like universities, such as University of Massachusetts and so forth, they're all published on the website. So if you go to the website and you click on the science page and then all the way down to resources, you'll be able to read about studies that were done on multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, and concussions. There was a very interesting study done on concussions that showed significant results when compared to regular treatment for concussions. So it's a very unique science that actually is completely different than the science and the normal health technology that we are familiar with. So I developed this in Hawaii, and in Hawaii 2,000 years ago, for example, a medicine man who was taking care of the village was only getting paid full salary when everyone in the village was healthy. The minute somebody would get sick, they would give him less fish, less water, less food, because he was not doing a good job. So that's the optimum picture of true healthcare, when everyone is healthy. And the minute the Western pharmaceutical companies got involved, the business of selling drugs and selling chemicals is much more of a focus than actually achieving health. So what this technology is designed to do is to basically maintain health and keep you healthy and bring you back to health without the use of chemicals.
Chtěla bych se zeptat, tato technologie slouží k tomu, abychom to tělo regenerovali mezi cvičením? Nenahrazuje to cvičení, je to pouze jako regenerační, omlazovací záležitost?
Thank you. Yeah, so this doesn't truly replace regular workouts, but it makes the regular workouts much easier. So if you do Vasper in the beginning, then you can do other workouts and achieve much higher benefit. So we started working with professional athletes, for example, with hockey players, San Jose Sharks in this case, and they would have very difficult training, very extensive training at 5 in the morning, and they would come for Vasper. And they would still sleep better and actually achieve and report much better benefits. But when they started doing Vasper first, then they could lift more weights. Their regular workouts were much more effective. And they would also get into the flow state. So we would measure their heart rate and their percentage of their VO2 max, their oxygen absorption. And most of the young athletes, when they get a puck on a stick, you could see their heart rate go up, and they would have difficult time scoring or passing it to the right person. However, the people that did Vasper on a regular basis would go into the flow state, and they would just perform much better as athletes. So we have seen that on a regular basis with professional athletes. So Vasper is your number one protocol that you do before anything else, and then everything else, your whole day becomes much easier. Okay, so I can also tell you about some very specific history that I've had with athletes that could shed more light on how this works. So again, many of the athletes in the United States have been known to use synthetic hormones. And one time, one of the coaches sent one of these athletes to me, and I opened my laptop and was taking him through the slides, and after a couple of minutes, I knew he was not interested. He was looking at his ceiling and so forth, and I said, look, if you're not interested in this, of course, we don't have to waste each other's time. And he says, Peter, thank you so much for your honesty. I'm not interested. I'm really healthy. Check this out. And he pulls up his shirt to show me his six-pack. And I said, well, if I was a young female, I may be interested in this, but I'm interested in your hormone levels. So we checked his hormones, and basically his testosterone level was non-existent. His cortisol levels were very high. And when I met with him the second time, I realized the first question I asked him, he says, you have zero testosterone, are you having any sex? And he says, yes, but I'm using Viagra. A 25-year-old man was using Viagra. So he came basically back to us, and we took him through this whole process, and after 6 weeks of using Vasper about 5 to 6 times a week, he started producing his own hormones. So he achieved both hormonal balance, emotional balance, and he was able to stop using the synthetic hormones. Once you start using the synthetic hormones, you cannot just stop because you're sort of dependent on it, just like illegal drugs. So the other thing that I could share with you is basically how amazingly fulfilling and amazing it is to see the results from this. So I have this formula for happiness that goes like this. If you want to be happy for 5 minutes, take a nap. You want to be happy from time to time, go on vacation. If you want to be happy for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, go on vacation. If you want to be happy from time to time, have a drink or whatever gives you pleasure. But if you want continuous gratification in life, keep creating positive differences in the lives of others. So this is where I think we can, myself and the Vasper team, when you come to meet us, we can all say that we have extremely gratifying work because we see the results that are immediately available, and expressed gratitude through all of our clients. So, yes.
Může to nahradit i funkci žláz, které vyrábí hormony?
Well, it doesn't replace the function of the pituitary gland, but it regulates the function of pituitary gland. So if you have a pituitary gland dysfunction from using synthetic hormones or some type of a pituitary gland disease, the pituitary gland that regulates your entire hormonal system doesn't work properly, and we can actually, through this technology, get it to work normally again without using drugs. So yes, in that sense it can make a huge difference. Yes?
What's your vision about the Vasper future? What's your vision about Vasper future?
Thank you. That's a great question. So I believe that this technology came through me rather than from me. And the idea is to share this technology with as many people as possible. There always will be people that like to have a pill for something. But Vasper gives you an alternative choice to achieve health without chemicals. So the future is to share this technology throughout the world. So we now have several hundred of these machines all over the planet. And the plan is to go to mass manufacturing, apply AI technology there, which actually will replace the human being because we will be measuring very specific physiology, such as the heart rate, blood pressure, core body temperature, hydration level. And then the AI algorithm will look at all of that and adjust the machine specifically to each individual person at a specific individual time. So then you can do truly very credible science because you don't have variables that a human being brings. And a human being sometimes has other things on their mind. In fact, our physiology changes from second to second depending on what goes through your mind. So does that make sense? Yeah. So when I worked for many years with professional athletes, and we still do, and there is a very specific training that includes diet and specific amount of exercise and so forth, and then if they do all of that, they get specific results, that you will have a top-notch athlete. And imagine what happens when an athlete that's important to the team goes through all of that, and half an hour before the game, he learns that the girlfriend that he was going to marry is now dating someone else. How do you think that athlete is going to perform at this game? Obviously not as well as he would otherwise. So hormonal balance and emotional balance are extremely important. And we also learned that athletes overtrain, mostly because they train too hard. And when it comes for them time to perform, they don't have enough endocrine system available for performance. So again, this is where this technology completely takes over and takes the human factor out of the picture, and you get very consistent results that you can study and you can build on and improve. So we've worked with military, with corporate health, as well as individual people.
There was a question from the back, I'm just translating. It's regarding your clinical studies and how long did they run for, and if you could be more specific about the content, maybe.
Thank you. So the clinical trials that we've had were completed by teaching institutions, by university, like University of Massachusetts and so forth. And one of the longer trials was 2 years, and they did trial on concussions. So in American football, that's a very common occurrence where people actually get, their heads hit and they end up with the concussions. And there's something called post-concussive syndrome. So they did a study with 2 groups where there was a Vasper group and a control group. The Vasper group would go through all of the conventional treatment for concussions, which included hyperbaric chambers, some medications, and diet, and so forth. And then they would do Vasper. So the Vasper group would actually do Vasper with compression and cooling, while the control group did exactly the same thing, but when they got on Vasper, they would not apply compression and cooling. And after the treatment was over, the Vasper group kept getting better and better, and the other groups, the control group was basically coming back to the same post-concussive syndrome, headaches, depression, and inability to sleep. So this was published in the Journal of Neurotrauma. Journal of Neurotrauma is the highest regarded journal on the planet when it comes to brain injuries. It was published last year, early last year. We had trials on diabetes, on Parkinson's, and all of those are listed on our website. Anyone else?
Hi. I'd like to know if there's any public Vasper machines for use in Czech Republic already?
Yes, we have 3 machines here, and one of them is staying. One of them was sold, and we have 2 others for sale. So in Czech Republic, we have a foothold right now. We have several machines in Poland, and Poland is my home country, and that's where several studios, we're trying to put together several studios where they will be available for many people to use.
And my second question is, for how long do you manufacture and sell those machines? And if are there any, let's say, long-term drawbacks of using Vaspers?
Long-term progress?
Drawbacks.
Or drawbacks. So we've sold the first machines in 2014, and we sold those machines to the Strategic Operations Command. So those Navy SEALs, Delta Force, Green Berets, elite soldiers. And so we have a long history since 2014, almost 10 years. And there's no drawbacks because it's a very safe exercise. There was a safety trial done, which you can also see on our website. that shows exactly how they measured the performance and how they measured the safety and so forth. So if there were any drawbacks, I don't think I would be here and we would not be in business by now, because you may not be aware of this, that 80% of the world's attorneys live in the United States. 80%. And if somebody gets injured on a medical piece of equipment or by a doctor, you don't need any money to file the lawsuit. You just go to the lawyer and says, I was injured, or I think I was injured, and he files the lawsuit. And when he wins the lawsuit, he takes 40 or 50%, and the patient takes the other 40% or 50%. So it's almost like a game. And that's why a lot of people who have sometimes very good ideas are worried about bringing that to the market, because they could lose everything and go to jail. So we were lucky. We never had a lawsuit. We never had any injury. And we've treated now many thousands of people. So it's a very proven technology.
Hi, I have a question. This is a personal one. Have you thought about the use in psychology, right? You were talking about hormonal imbalances and balancing hormones.
Yeah.
A lot of psychological or clinical diseases or diagnoses are linked to hormonal imbalance. Are you thinking about research in that area?
Yes, we are. So just to make sure, we are not actually conducting the research ourselves. The research is done by teaching institutions, because if we did the research, it would not have any value, actually. But if a university does it, it has a tremendous amount of value. So a tremendous amount of research is being done with post-traumatic stress. We have a lot of soldiers that are coming back from different deployments, and they have post-traumatic stress. And this technology works beautifully for that. So again, we balance them hormonally, they're balanced emotionally, there are psychologists working with them. And the results are very consistent. Also, we have worked with people that, especially children that were classified as PTSD, not PTSD, I'm sorry, but what is the word I'm looking for? ADHD and so forth. And all of those things, all of those diseases basically are based on hormonal imbalance. Once you balance the hormones, they go away. You don't need chemicals for it. So, thank you. Yes?
You said that, my question is, how exactly, through which mechanism does the Vasper influence and regulate the endocrine system? Is it only through the buildup of the lactic acid or through other ways?
Thank you for asking that question. So there's three scientifically based principles. One is compression, which is concentration of lactic acid, not the amount, but the concentration of lactic acid. The second one is temperature control. And the third one is electrical grounding. So the Vasper effect happens when all three of those are working together, not just one. Does that make sense? Thank you. I think this is a very good way to learn something, because I don't want to be telling you stuff that you're not interested in hearing, but if you have a question and I can answer it, I think this is much more beneficial.
Dobrý den, velmi mě zaujala jedna vaše odpověď. Jsem pacientka, která zjistila, že jí nefunguje štítná žláza dostatečně, proto doživotně budu brát léky, beru je už 5 let. Díky těmto lékům jsem i otěhotněla, to znamená, že jsem za to byla ráda, ale nechci se smířit s tím, že bych doživotně měla ty léky brát. Vy jste upozornil na to, že by se ta hormonální rovnováha mohla tímto způsobem vyřešit. Zajímá mě to. Můžete mi to prosím ještě potvrdit? Já bych měla zájem o to.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. And yeah, thyroid issues are definitely something that conventional medicine treats with drugs. And if you were to go at any curriculum of any medical schools, the curriculum for medical schools is dictated by the drug companies. So what we consider healthcare is actually disease care because they want to sell drugs. We have seen a number of people with thyroid issues that completely recovered without any medications. In fact, when we opened the very first center in Honolulu, the head trainer that was using the equipment and taking other people through it was hyperthyroid. He had a hyperthyroid problem. So they irradiated his thyroid. And then he was given special medication to maintain the thyroid function. And when he started using Vasper, he became hyperthyroid again, which none of the doctors could understand how that's possible. So we figured out that if he did Vasper 2 to 3 times a week, he didn't need any medication and his thyroid was working beautifully. So we can replace drugs. You know, drugs don't actually heal a disease. They address the symptoms, not the root cause. And the reason that I designed this technology is because I had 2 of my own health challenges. When I sold my previous company and we moved to the big island of Hawaii with my wife and 2 children, I was pre-diabetic. My grandfather died of diabetes. And I also had fractures in both of my ankles, so I had trimular fractures that were quite painful. So I remember when I was not on pain medications, I would try to make it to the bathroom at night, and I had to go on my hands and knees. I couldn't put any weight on my feet, and that was 25 years ago. I was 50 years old. And the doctors were telling me I would be on insulin very quickly because of diabetes. So I wanted to design something that addresses the root cause rather than treat symptoms. And that's how this technology happened. It was, you know, I sold my business and I was retired at that point. And when I learned basically how powerful this technology is simply by working with it and seeing the results, then that's when this happened. So in Hawaii, I don't know if you're familiar with Hawaiian outrigger racing canoes. Those are very thin boats that are about 40 feet long, 8 meters long. And there's 6 people that are on it. And the person who has the most strength is the #1 seat because he's pushing quiet water. And he's also giving the tempo to the 5 people behind. So after I was racing those canoes as well, and after about 3 months of using the prototype, the very first Vasper prototype, the coach put me on the first seat. And I looked behind me, and everybody behind me was half my age. So when we came back to the port, all these men stood around me, and they said, "Peter, what kind of drugs are you on? This is not possible that you could perform this well at your age." And I said, "Well, I never will take drugs, and I never have, but I'm developing this new machine, and I actually need guinea pigs. I need people that I can practice on. So if any of you are interested, I need about 5 men." So I ended up with 5 men. They were, the youngest one was in his, I think, 61, 65, 70, 71. And I was working with them 3-4 times a week, and they were seeing results, and it was getting better. And at one point, one of the wives came, and she said, "Peter, we have to have a talk. I don't think you know the meaning of menopause." And I said, well, obviously not on personal experience, but I know what it is. And he says, no, you don't. Menopause means men on pause. He says, what have you done to my husband? You know, I was enjoying my menopause, and all of a sudden this man wants sex all the time. So that actually shocked me. I was not expecting to hear that, but we sent him to have his testosterone levels checked, and this man was 71 years old, and his free testosterone was over 880, I believe. So this was the first time that I actually realized that what we are doing is increasing the endogenous endocrine system. You know, we're not doing something that is done with synthetic hormones where it actually depresses hormones. This actually increased all of the hormones, and definitely testosterone in this case. So at this moment, we have a number of people that have seen significant amount of testosterone. Of course, their libido goes up. And the oldest person that we have is 80 years old, and who is an athlete. He's actually a world champion at his age group as a triathlete. He has 8 triathlons this year. So we are teasing him that he should start a harem because his testosterone is over 900. So that's just anecdotal stories from my work. Anyone else?
Hello, I would like to ask if this technology is able to help with like post-injury recovery, not just with the muscles, but also with like ligaments and other stuff.
I missed part of it. Post what recovery? Post-injury recovery, absolutely. Yeah, so we are seeing athletes who were injured on a regular basis, and many other people from car accidents. So I myself had a significant brain injury 6 years ago. I was at a stoplight in a very small car, and there was a very big, large car that hit me in the back, and I was just putting the car in the first gear, so my head slammed against the back of the seat, and I had a serious concussion. And normally I would be on hyperbaric chambers and months of therapy. And the concussion specialist, Dr. Kanto, basically said, look, you have this technology, let's try that. And in less than 6 weeks, my concussion symptoms were gone. So injuries is something we deal with on a regular basis. And the hospitals that use our equipment use it for injuries. There is a hospital in Texas that does heart transplants and coronary bypass surgery and so forth. And when they have a patient go through this procedure, of course, it's a very serious procedure. So when they come out, they have IVs and oxygen and everything else. And with IVs, they have several nurses, and they put these people on Vasper to increase their blood oxygen levels and to get rid of the toxins. And they do extremely well. They recover very fast, because prior to that, the surgery would go perfect, but then the patient would die because they were too, they had too much toxins in, or they didn't get enough blood oxygen on board. So this is one case where this technology is used with very, very seriously, sick people that have to, the surgery went well, now we have to bring them back. Anyone else?
Já bych se chtěl zeptat, je-li tato vaše praxe někde popsaná, nebo máte-li to někde uveřejněno, je-li možno se s tím někde seznámit, eventuálně navázat s váma nějaký kontakt. Děkuji.
Contact you where, I guess I missed the part where you mentioned the website and when your scientific traction is discussed more. So
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so if you go to Vasper.com, V-A-S-P-E-R, so it stands for vascular performance, Vasper.com, and then you can go to the science page and go all the way down to resources. But if you want to get hold of me personally, my email address is very simple. It's peter@vasper.com. peter@vasper.com. So any questions you have, please send me email, and I will send you all the information you may require. Okay? Excellent. So thank you so much for coming. I hope I didn't put you to sleep. It's a very interesting, phenomenal technology that obviously I and my team are very passionate about. It's, if you've never heard of it, possibly it went over, I maybe was too scientific about it. But I invite all of you for the next 3 days to come to our booth. We have 3 machines, and you can actually experience it. You could try it, and you can see how you feel afterwards. And I've never seen anyone who did this and did not feel inspired and definitely motivated. So thank you so much.